So these help me sound a bit more natural, I believe, in a foreign language. Welcome, all the language learners. In this video, we're talking about some good language learning habits. I don't claim to be an expert in language learning, but while studying abroad for several years, I picked up some tips and tricks, and I just wanted to share these with you guys here today. These are actually some of the habits that I wish I would have done from day zero learning a foreign language. But before I jump into the habits, there are two things that I wanted to touch on first. First, language learning is a lifelong process. So it is important to keep in mind the fact that we have to make intentional efforts over a long period of time to learn languages. Secondly, language learning is not a linear process, although it sounds a bit counterintuitive. What I mean by this means that if we stop learning or using the language, we'll end up hitting plateau or even lose the ability to speak the language. So these are the reasons why having good habits is crucial to learn languages. So let's just get into it then. Number 1. Read aloud. Before I went to the US for college, I had a chance to take one-on-one English class. And every time I came to the class, my tutors always made me read aloud. And I wasn't really good at that. Back then, I was like 16 years old and I didn't really see the point of reading aloud. In other language courses like my Japanese and German language courses, my teachers always told me to read aloud. I realized how helpful it was. If we think about it, back at our school, in our native land, our teachers in elementary or middle school made us read aloud in class in front of our classmates. It turns out it was not to test us, but rather to help us improve our speaking skill. In this regard, I believe it really helped a lot with my English speaking skill when I just got started learning English seriously. I really wish I could have kept on this habit, reading aloud, down the road. But for some reason, I stopped it. Probably because I was lazy. But when I got a little bit older, after making like countless number of presentations and meeting a lot of people and engaging in intensive discussion class, I realized that I still have some room to grow in this area. So recently I started reading aloud once again. I do this 10 minutes every morning. I don't just read aloud, but I try to practice my gesture with my hands as well. And I try to speak as clearly as possible. And I try not to say that kind of stuff. This is how I read aloud. And I noticed that this is a really great practice, especially when I'm outside of English-speaking country, like in Korea right now. That is because I use mainly two languages, English and Korean, and I probably use different muscles in my mouth and probably different areas in my brain as well when I'm speaking Korean. So I try to do some intentional practice, including this reading aloud every day, at least to maintain my skill. And it is kind of an easy thing to do in the morning, so it kind of like helps you, start your engine. So it's pretty good. Number 2, watch a series in your target language. So this is the part where you're making your language learning journey a bit more fun. I think watching a series is a great way to learn languages, especially when it comes to picking up daily phrases and expressions and improving your vocab. And we might just be watching the series, but we're actually training our ears. Back in the days when there was no Netflix or Prime Video, that kind of stuff, I used to download some series that I like and store them in my external hard drive and watch them over and over again. So early days when I was just learning English, I used to watch The Big Bang Theory, Modern Family, and Prison Break, that kind of series. I loved them so much and I watched them over and over. I think this helped a lot. For Japanese, because I spent my final year of high school there, I used to watch Liar Game, the series, and Bloody Monday, and Dragon Sakura, that kind of stuff, kind of old drama as well. And occasionally some anime as well. I particularly love two animes, One Piece and Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is my favorite. For German, I like Biohackers, which came out pretty recently, I think like 2 years or 3 years ago or something like that. Pretty interesting series about like biohackers. And these days, there are great platforms like Netflix and Prime Video, where you can watch in many different languages and subtitles. So here's how I would watch a series in a foreign language. At first, if you're a beginner, you can turn on a subtitle in your native language. And when you're watching the series or episode again, you can turn on like both subtitles in your target language and native language, or you could just turn on the subtitle just in your target language. And when you're watching it for the third time, you could just, watch it without a subtitle. Number 3. Reading books in your target language. Reading comprehension is an essential skill even in your foreign language. I understand that everybody has different reasons to study foreign language. Some people just want to be able to talk to foreigners, others want to get a degree in the foreign language. But I think the reading skill in your target language is a fundamental pillar to almost every possible skill that you want to gain in your target language, such as conversation, translation, or getting a degree, or getting a job. This also could be pretty fun. You could start with a book that you have already read in your native language, or just pick something you like. Or it could be a comic book, just like this one, One Piece. So I bought this one when I was taking a trip to Japan back in 2014. So for those of you who are a big fan of One Piece, you're gonna notice that this is a pretty old book. That is much further along by now. And yeah, entirely in Japanese. And yeah, this is a great gateway to get into the world of books in a foreign language because these are simply fun. And I got a couple more Japanese books, which are Norwegian Woods by Murakami Haruki, world famous author. One challenging thing about reading in Japanese, not every book is like that in Japanese, but some books are like this. If you notice, their characters go from top to bottom. When it comes to speed reading, it's kind of hard to read when you're taking an exam. And early days, I was just learning English, or when I just started taking English seriously, I remember I read these books, Tuesdays with Mori and Harry Potter, the first one, the very first one. And who doesn't like Harry Potter, right? The narrative is quite engaging and quite not difficult to read, both of these books. So I was just skimming through these books, and it kind of made me want to read again. Not too challenging books. In German, I couldn't really read books when I was in Germany, mainly because I was getting my master's degree in English, not in German. But I still try to learn some German, but I was not just good enough to read this kind of book, I still want to study German, and I want to be able to read these books because I heard really good things about these books, and then I love to learn German, even though it's really, really hard. And the first book is this, Eine Hand voll Sternenstaub, which I think it means a hand full of stardust or something. What a beautiful title, right? It must be about the universe. And the second book is called Die Vermessung der Welt, The Measurement of the World. Heard really good things about these books. So yeah, hopefully someday. And number 4, reading magazines in your target language. Reading magazines could be pretty fun too. I am actually a big fan of magazines and like to read them and collect them. And I have some of my magazines on my desk right here I like to share with you guys. And one good thing to know about the magazines is that it gets really heavy in a stack, if you didn't know. When I was wrapping up my life in Germany last year, I decided to grab some magazines like this, hoping to be able to read when I'm better at German. It's gonna happen, I know, someday. And back when I was in the US, I got some science magazines right here. I got 3 of these still, which I believe everybody knows about this magazine or this science website, the articles. These magazines, which are Time 2020, 2021, and then 2022. I think at the end of this year, it's becoming my tradition to get one of these Times magazine. For example, this one, it came out in December 2020. What a wonderful cover this is. This shows everything about 2020, right? Because this was when the pandemic started, back in March. I remember it was declared as a pandemic. We basically lost the year. I guess that's how many people feel about 2020, but yeah, this really encapsulates the year of 2020. I love this. And in German, like I showed you, I used to read some Spiegel, but these are quite hard magazines, I think, for intermediate language speaker. Without a dictionary, I would be quite lost. I think I could understand the grammar. I think it's a nice collection. I love them. And in Japanese, I didn't really read a magazine back when I was in Japan, but I used to read newspapers every morning. There was a newspaper stand for everybody on the ground floor of my dorm, so I decided to read them. So one article that I still remember is about Steve Jobs. I was in Japan in 2011. I think that's the year that Steve Jobs passed away, and there was a huge article in the newspaper. I actually scraped it and stored it somewhere, but I think I lost it. Yeah, I'm quite sad about it. Yeah, because I'm quite an Apple fanboy, so then I have my iPad. Anyway, it could be a really good habit to read the magazine if you want to improve your vocabs. And the magazines could give you a really good topic for conversation with foreign friends. And lastly, number 5, collecting phrases and expressions in your target language. Back when I was a sophomore at a liberal arts college in the US, I took a German course. By that time, I spoke English and Japanese as my second and third language, so I had a lot of language teachers. But among the foreign language teachers that I've ever met, he's the best foreign language teacher I've ever had to this day. So one day in my sophomore year, I felt stuck at English in terms of language learning. I thought I hit plateau in my English skill, which means that it was not growing, it was not improving. Although I was speaking, writing, reading, and listening every day, pretty much every day, because I was at a US American college. And it was quite disappointing, so I decided to set up a meeting with him and consult him about this matter. And I asked him, how do I improve my foreign language skill? And he asked me, you mean your English or German language skill? I said, my English skill. Then he seemed a little bit puzzled because I was not asking a question about like how to improve a German language, but English language. So I explained them why I was asking the question and my situation as well. So when I was asking this question, I was simply being a student who were learning a foreign language. So in a big picture, I believe that I was asking the right question to a right person because he knew what it felt like to learn a language. Back then, when I was a sophomore year, I think my English was good enough to take college courses without major issues. But I always wanted to grow more. I just did not know how to get from this level to more advanced level. And as a response, he shared one trick with me, which was to collect phrases or expressions. He had been speaking German since he was in high school or college year, if I remember correctly. And I went to Germany with him, and I saw German people making compliment of him, saying that, oh, you really sound like a native speaker. But he said that he still collected phrases or expressions that he's not familiar with or that he's familiar with but he could not use fluently. This advice was highly inspiring. I mean, this was a person who had been studying German or researching or speaking German for tens of years, and he was getting compliments from native speakers, but he was still making intentional efforts to improve and still studying hard. So his passion, modesty, professionalism deeply touched me. So I have done the same thing. I collected phrases and expressions in these 2 notebooks. I might not have done as efficiently or effectively as he has done, but I still managed to collect many phrases in these 2 notebooks. While I was watching a series, movie, or reading a book, or reading a magazine, every time I came across phrases that are new to me, or something that I'm not familiar with, or even something that I'm familiar with, which means I could understand them when I hear them or read them, but I couldn't really use them fluently. I collected them here and practiced them occasionally, like whenever I have time, I just busted these notebooks out and just like read them aloud or like practice without looking at it or something like that, and then I used them to my native friends. So I started this in 2016 and I managed to collect like 1,000 phrases in these, actually like 980, something like that. 989 was the last thing I collected. But I mean, I couldn't really memorize everything and commit it to my brain and use them like fluently, but I did with a lot of them, and it has been massively helpful. Let me give you an example real quick. English phrases, number 1. It says, I know you're on a schedule. Yes, this is quite an easy phrase, but I think I would have said in a simpler language, like, I know you're busy, something like that. But I think I know you're on a schedule might be more natural. And let me read the second one as well. I'm acclimating to the warmer climate. This one as well, I think I would have said, I am getting used to warmer climate. So these help me sound a bit more natural, I believe, in a foreign language. And I think being a little bit more natural bridges the gap between the native speakers and myself as a foreigner. So this brings us to the end of this video. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching this rambly video. And also let me know if you have any good language learning habits and which foreign language are you learning and why are you learning them. If you feel like it, leave it down in the comment section below. And if you're thinking about going abroad to learn a foreign language, you might want to check out this video right here, where I talk about how to learn a foreign language while you're abroad. I made this video because foreign language skills, unfortunately, don't come to us automatically just because we're in a foreign land. We have to make intentional efforts every time. So I hope to see you there again, and thank you so much for watching again. Bye bye.